Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We'd like to call to order the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners meeting. And first, we'll be led in prayer by Commissioner Turner, then Commissioner Johnson will lead us in our pledge.
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you again for the opportunity that each one of us has been afforded. I ask that you give us wisdom and guidance tonight as we talk about decisions that are important to the county. May we honor you. May we honor those who voted us into these positions, and always remind us that we actually serve you and we serve them at the same time. Guide us again tonight in our discussions. May they honor you in the way that we treat each other. Ask these things in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen.
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Schaefer. Here. Commissioner Piercy. Here. Commissioner Jordan. Here. Commissioner P. Here. Commissioner Cook. Here. Commissioner Jernigan. Here. Commissioner Cush. Present. Commissioner Reed. Here. Commissioner Gurley. Here. Commissioner Turner. Here. Commissioner Allen. Here. Commissioner Stevens. Here. Commissioner Johnson. Here. Commissioner Baum. Here. Commissioner Nipper. Here. Commissioner Dodd. Here. Commissioner Phillips, Commissioner McAdoo, Commissioner Ely, Commissioner Gooch, Commissioner Sereno. We have a quorum, 20 present.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Now we have given out, I believe, a copy of the minutes of the last meeting. Do we have a motion? Commissioner Phillips.
Mayor Burgess, I've reviewed those minutes. I find them in order and move that we dispense with the reading and that they be approved as presented.
Second, Commissioner Cush. Does anyone have any corrections or additions? If not, then all of you in favor of that, please say aye.
Aye.
Any
Mayor,
opposed?
Just one quick announcement while I've got the floor. We've had another granddaddy amongst our midst. I believe it was a week ago tonight that Isaac Michael was born, and Robert is a grandparent, I think for the third time, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, congratulations. Okay, next is public comments, and we have some people that do wish to speak. I'll remind those speakers that we do have a time limit of 3 minutes, so please respect that and honor that, and we would really appreciate that. So first is Mr. Dennis Keat. I hope I spelled that right. I mean, pronounced that correctly.
Good evening. My name is Dennis Kite. I live at 4208 Bradeville Pike in Murfreesboro. I wanted to speak to you tonight shortly about a flooding problem we have. On the 4th of June 2016, Mr. Bob Parks Auction Company held an auction at the Singleton Estate on Bradeville Pike. The name of the auctioneer was Keith Strain, and we bought lot number 2 of that auction. We began our construction on our home in February 2017. Soon after we began construction, we received a significant amount of rainfall. I believe it was 4 to 5 inches. This amount of rain caused our property to flood. It was not ponding, as we have been told at the auction. This is local flooding. Having already obtained a building loan and started construction, we decided it would not be monetarily feasible to not continue to build our home. We put all our savings into this home, and hopefully this will be our retirement home. Our builder obtained a building permit from the county, and neither he nor us were told that we were building on an island surrounded by floodwaters. Our bank, when we applied for a construction loan, also checked with the county and was never told of this problem. One thing that is causing the problem of the flooding on our property and others is, according to engineers at the Planning Commission, a stream that is apparently a headwater of Lytle Creek. Where the stream flows through our property, we have cleaned it out. Unfortunately, on the properties on each side of us, the stream is almost completely stopped up by grass, trees, the banks of the stream have collapsed, etc. Once the stream, especially in places where the stream bed has collapsed, until there's no stream bed but just level ground, the water just spreads out all over the land. We have 5 acres. Our neighbor has approximately 15 acres. Our neighbors behind us have, I think, 7 acres. This water spreads out over all that land. Since starting construction, a developer, I believe it's the Jones Group, is developing a subdivision next to our neighbor's property. All this land had been purchased at the aforementioned auction in June 2016. A retention pond was built for this subdivision, and unfortunately for both us and our neighbors, the Supicons, the drain for the retention pond is located at the rear corner of our neighbor's property. This development with the retention pond drain is located where it causes the overflow from the retention pond to release large amounts of water onto our neighbor's property, which, as their property becomes flooded, the extra water flows onto our property, causing even more flooding. The county engineer stated that's the natural way the water is supposed to flow. Mr. and Mrs. Supicon, myself, and my wife have met with several county engineers regarding the Jones Group retention pond, which has worsened the flooding on our properties. We were told that the retention pond meets county codes and it's responsibility of each landowner to manage their own water problems. They suggested that perhaps Mr. and Mrs. Supicon should dig a ditch to the stream of Lytle Creek. This would in turn cause the water to run even faster onto our property. It also would not relieve the flooding due to the stream being stopped up. On Monday, 12 February 2018, after we were surrounded with yet another flood, we went to the county planning engineers and spoke with Mr. Mike Hughes, the county engineer. We discussed the increased flooding of the retention pond and once again was told that it meets county codes. This retention pond apparently has problems because it has had to have several extra work done on it, which includes placing a buffer in front of the inlet where the water comes in of a large stone, almost like a dike, of large stones in front of it to keep the water from coming in so fast. We explained to Mr. Hughes that we were told at the auction it was subject to occasional ponding. Mr. Hughes reviewed several aerial photos while we were talking and stated that we didn't have a ponding problem, we have a flooding problem.
Mr. Kite, we appreciate your remarks, and if you'll leave us a copy of that, please.
Okay, sir.
We can follow up with this on our engineer and our planning department, please. And thank you, Mr. Kite, for those remarks, and we'll attend to them at least review them. All right, next, Jessica, I'm going to mispronounce her name as well, Jessica Supicon.
Good evening, thank you. We purchased the land at the same auction as the Kites with the intent to build on. We started our construction process this last December of 2017. The significant excess water coming from the retention pond belonging to the Jones Development Group, paired with the high water table that's already on the land, has caused considerable flooding on our property. My builder, Doug Vandeveer, along with his footing contractor, Ralph Baxter, both said that in their 30 years of construction, they've never seen a water problem that bad. We had to use double the steel and double the concrete to dig our footers because of the water problem. When meeting with county engineers along with the Kites, we were told that any water transferred to us from the retention pond, whose drain flows directly onto our property, was now our problem because they put in the retention pond first before we were able to start building. We've invested our entire career savings into this house, and we've had to go way outside of our budget to make up for the water issues we're now facing. We also feel misled by being sold this tract at the auction when the estate owners, the Singleton Estate, and Bob Parks Auction Group knew that this area would flood. Also, we feel like we would like to have these ditches dug on all 4 sides of our property in order to alleviate some of that water that should flow to that Lytle Creek, like Mr. Kite had mentioned. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Next, Mr. Darrell Whaley.
My name is Darrell Whaley. I live at 4974 West Trimble Road in Milton. I pastor Kingdom Ministries Worship Center at 675 East Jefferson Pike in Walter Hill, just across from the landfill. And I've got a couple of things I want to share tonight. All of you know about the smell. Sunday nights and Wednesday nights, it's terrible. And we have cookouts at our pavilion on Sunday nights during the summer months, and it's terrible. And this is not the only time anybody's ever complained about that. The road, the mayor knows. I've called him several times about it, even Nancy Allen, the previous mayor. They were going to check it out. You know, the state blames it. I mean, the management of the landfill blames it on the state because they won't let them put water out, run water on the road. And one of them even told me that they had a truck that they could wash it with, but the state said it was too heavy. But now I know that there's laws, state laws. I called the state, and I told them I was going to park my little truck across that entrance to the landfill. This was back in the 90s when I was pastor at Walter Hill First Baptist. And I got a call real quick from Nancy Allen, you know, on that deal. But, you know, there's laws on the construction companies that they have to, you know, county enforces these on the roads and dirt and mud on the road. And I don't understand why we can't get it off of that out there. And then there's the buzzards. Came up church one day, we were in this cold weather, about 200 or better buzzards on top of the church, just as thick as you could get them. During the cold weather, and that we got a dark colored tin roof, and it drew them down there. They want to keep their feet warm. But you know what buzzards do when they come to roost, don't you? And it's white. It looked real good on that brown roof. And our pavilion is the same way. But we had over 200 buzzards out there, and they're constantly coming over and landing and things like this. And so, you know, it's time to do something. You know, we had all these promises for all these years, and nothing's come through. Now, let me tell you this. If the future's not going to be any better than the past, then it just needs to shut down because they don't have a track record of doing anything they said they're going to do. Now, guys and ladies, don't start kicking the can down the road from committee to committee to committee until you get the right people that agree with you so we can get done what we want to do. The people at Walter Hill area are ready for a change and do something about it. And if you can't, shut it down.
Mr. Mike Linton.
"200 buzzards on the roof. I can't meet that one." My name is Mike Linton. I live at 155 Spence Creek Lane in Murfreesboro. I'm a member of the Rutherford Neighborhood Alliance, a nonpartisan organization devoted to county government transparency. As part of our work regarding the county legal services, we have looked at property tax delinquency, but we have encountered a problem. According to the law, Tennessee Code annotated 67-5-1903, a law current through the 2017 regular session, and I read, I quote, "Annually at the July meeting of the county legislative body, the trustee shall present a report to the county legislative body of all delinquent taxpayers and double assessments in the county. This report shall be verified by an affidavit of the trustee and filed with the county clerk. The report shall be spread upon the minutes of the county legislative body and municipality respectively," and I end quote. I have a copy of the law here and provided each of you with a copy. Parenthetically, it is our understanding that in this county, the final June meeting of the county commission at which the tax levy is set is considered the July meeting, since there is no actual meeting in July. Several members have gone through the county records looking for these reports, I as recently as the past Tuesday afternoon. We did not find them there. This is odd, since according to the law, such a report verified by affidavit should easily be referenced in the minutes of the county commission. After further inquiries, the county trustee admitted that no such list had been presented to the county commission and filed with the county clerk, but such a list was maintained in the trustee's office. Because taxes delinquent for a decade are forgiven and cannot be collected without the annual report being presented to the County Commission, reviewed by the Commission, and filed with the County Clerk, there is no formal public opportunity for the County Commissioners to track and review long delinquent taxes. This can result in the county forfeiting tens of thousands of dollars in uncollected taxes. This failure to report also violates Tennessee law. We urge the Commission to look into this matter and make the county's actions lawful by fulfilling the requirements of Tennessee Code annotated 67-5-1903. The records need to be corrected as far back as this reporting has been neglected. Thank you.
Mr. Stan Voigt.
Mayor Burgess, members of the commission, thank you for the opportunity to come before you. My name's Stan Vaught. I live at 6675 West Trimble Road in Milton. First of all, I want to thank you for your service. I know what you go through. We're fathers, husbands, wives, mothers, small business people. It's hard to do this. It's hard to balance life and try to guide this county. So I thank you for your service. I appreciate you. What I wanted to talk with you just briefly about tonight, or just give you some observations that I have seen over the last 40 years in Rutherford County, talking about the landfill and garbage and what do we do with it? Where did we come from? How did we get here? Where do we go? And I know Pettis would appreciate this. Back when we were a lot younger than we are now, and you've probably written about this, it used to be we all had burn barrels in the backyard. Everybody remember those? We had those. And probably about the mid-'70s, we got into the solid waste business here in the county. State said, find you a good piece of land, dig you a hole, and let's bury it. Out of sight, out of mind. Pretty good way to get rid of it, right? But we have progressed forward here for the last 30 or 40 years, and my tenure on the commission was met with, I'm going to say difficulties at some times. Some of you I had the pleasure of serving with and know what I'm talking about, but the county wasn't the best operator of a landfill. I think now Mac and his crew, they do an excellent job of keeping it picked up from the convenience centers and the recycling programs that were started, I guess, in the early 90s here. They've progressed. But, back then we asked for help with the state to widen Jefferson Pike. We've asked for the state to help us with a lot of things associated with the landfill. But I think it's come, from my observation, it's really come to a point in time, enough's enough. The citizens, the people of Walter Hill, and some of us, I'm going to classify myself as Lascassas Milton area, it's time for it to go away. I know, we had talked back about it, and some of you don't know this. The county at one time, bought the Guy James property for a landfill. It was never really purchased for a landfill. It did have the ability to do that, but it was really for leverage. And Nancy Allen and Mr. Mankin, when they were county executive, county mayor, they did use it to the best of our ability to leverage with BFI. But, I want you to think long and hard before there's any other expansions done. I would just ask you to really put it on your heart and mind that we've got to be serious about recycling. We can get rid of most of it that way if we will invest in it. We've invested in our education system in this county. We've invested in our road system in this county. We're going to have to invest in solid waste in this county. One of our great leaders from years past, Mr. John Bragg, taught me this when I was in college. He said, Stan, education plus roads equals jobs. And it does. It's been very beneficial to Rutherford County. But I think now, moving in to the next 40, 50, 60 years, we've really got to think a lot about getting out of the landfill business and getting it out of this county. 40 years is long enough for Walter Hill to take it on the chin. Thank you.
Okay, next is elections and confirmations. Commissioner Turner.
Thank you, Mayor Burgess. Commissioners, you will find on your iPad a list of notaries that we need to approve, and I make a motion for their approval.
Second, Commissioner Phillips. Any additions anyone has to include? If not, all of you in favor of that, please say aye.
Aye. Steering would like to also announce 3 vacancies and 1 alternate vacancy on the Equalization Board. And steering would like to also announce the confirmation and reappointment of Helene Colvin to the Smyrna Rutherford County Airport Authority. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion for that approval as well.
Okay, and a second, Commissioner Jordan. No discussion. All of you in favor of that, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Now, a resolution to approve our consent agenda. Commissioner Phillips.
Thank you, Mayor Burgess. I've reviewed the consent agenda. I find all those items appropriate, and I move that they be approved and adopted.
Second, Commissioner Nipper. Does anyone else have anything they would wish to remove from that list? If not, then we're ready to vote, so please cast your votes.
Anyone that did not vote and wishes to vote, or anyone who would like to change your vote, you may do so now.
Record the votes, please.
20 yes, motion passes.
Okay, now we will start on our reports by standing committees, and we do have two public hearings scheduled for 6:30, but we'll move along as quickly as we can here on these reports. Budget, Finance, and Investment Committee, Commissioner Baum, please.
Good evening. We've got several grants and funding for a school for you to consider tonight, but we will start with item J1A, which is a solid waste fund budget amendment, and this is to provide funding for leachate hauling and treatment at the landfill. Be it resolved by the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners that the Solid Waste Fund be amended as follows. Post-closure care costs, increased expenditures for contracts for post-closure care, $53,000, and decrease in assigned fund balance by $53,000. Resolved this 15th day of March 2018. Mr. Chairman, I move for approval.
And second, Commissioner Piercy. Any other discussion or questions? Right, please cast your votes.
Anyone that did not vote and wishes to vote, or anyone who would like to change your vote, you may do so now.
Record the votes, please.
20 yes, motion passes.
Item J1B, Convenience Center Grant for Solid Waste. This is to provide equipment and to fund the construction of upgrades at a current convenience center site. Whereas Rutherford County has received a convenience center grant from the State of Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation in the amount of $200,000 for the provision of convenience center equipment acquisition, new site construction, and upgrading of current sites. And whereas the grant is 50% state funded and requires a $100,000 match by the county and is effective for the period beginning March 9th, 2018 and ending March 8th, 2023. Therefore, be it resolved by the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners that the county mayor and other appropriate officials of Rutherford County, Tennessee be and are hereby authorized to execute a grant contract with the State of Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation, a copy of the same being attached hereto as Exhibit 1 and incorporated herein by reference as if set forth herein at length verbatim, to accept the Convenience Center grant in the amount of $200,000 and requiring a $100,000 match by the county. Resolved this 15th day of March 2018. Mr. Chairman, I move for approval.
Commissioner Jordan, second, and maybe others as well. Commissioner Reed wanted to be in on that too, I think. Any further discussion? All right, please cast your votes.
Anyone that did not vote and wishes to vote, or anyone who would like to change your vote, you may do so now.
Record the votes, please.
19 yes, motion passes.
Next is item J1C, Measurement Grant for Solid Waste and Related Budget Amendment. This is a grant that will be used to put vehicle counters at all convenience center sites. Currently, we are able to measure the tonnage that's dumped or deposited, and this will allow us to learn the number of vehicles that move through these centers. Whereas Rutherford County has received a measurement grant from the State of Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation in the amount of $14,080 to provide support for the implementation of the 2015-2025 Solid Waste and Materials Management Plan, and whereas the grant is 50% state funded and is effective for the period beginning March 9th, 2018 and ending March 8th, 2023, therefore be it resolved by the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners that the county mayor and other appropriate officials of Rutherford County, Tennessee be and are hereby authorized to execute a grant contract with the State of Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation, a copy of the same being attached hereto as Exhibit 1 and incorporated herein by reference, as if set forth herein at length verbatim, to accept the measurement grant in the amount of $14,080 with 50% state funded, and additionally, that the Solid Waste Fund be amended as follows to recognize the revenue from the grant and to appropriate said proceeds. Convenience centers, decreased assigned fund balance $7,040, increased revenue for solid waste grants by $7,040, and increased expenditures for other supplies and materials by $14,080. Resolved this 15th day of March 2018. Mr. Chairman, I move for approval.
And a second from Commissioner Serino and others. Any further discussion? Yes, sir. Commissioner Phillips.
Is this a one-time amount of money? It's not every year, so this one-time $14,000 is supposed to last us through 2022 or 2023, is that correct?
It's one time just to purchase these counting devices.
There's going to be another resolution presented a little bit later that attempts to end emissions testing. If that were to pass and go into effect sometime in the near future, within the next year or two or three, would this money have to be refunded to the state? What would happen?
This is solid waste funding, putting counters at our recycling centers. Any further discussion? Please cast your votes.
Anyone that did not vote and wishes to vote, or anyone who would like to change your vote, you may do so now.
Record the votes, please.
20 yes, motion passes.
Item J1D is an amendment to solid waste feasibility study and related budget amendment. This is to provide funding for a study to provide assistance implementing a strategic plan for what to do with the landfill. Whereas the City of Murfreesboro and Rutherford County entered into a memorandum of understanding in June 2016 relative to employing a firm to provide a feasibility study and develop a solid waste strategic plan for future waste disposal, and whereas the entities entered into an agreement in August 2016 with the firm of Greshman, Brickner, and Bratton Incorporated to provide said feasibility study at a cost of $250,100, with one half to be paid by the City of Murfreesboro in accordance with the Memorandum of Understanding, and whereas the entities now desire to amend the agreement to provide for implementation assistance of the strategic plan in the amount of $200,000, with one half to be paid by the City of Murfreesboro in accordance with the Memorandum of Understanding, and to extend the term of the agreement to December 31st, 2018. Therefore, be it resolved by the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners Commissioners that the county mayor and all other required officials of Rutherford County, Tennessee be and are hereby authorized to execute an amendment with Greshman, Brickner, and Bratton Incorporated, a copy of the same being attached hereto as Exhibit 1 and incorporated herein by reference, as if set forth herein at length verbatim, to the feasibility study agreement at a cost of $200,000, with one half to be paid by the City of Murfreesboro in accordance with the previously approved memorandum of understanding, and to extend the term of the agreement to December 31st, 2018, and additionally, that the Solid Waste Fund be amended as follows to appropriate funds for the amendment to the feasibility study. Post-closure care costs: increased revenue, contracted services, $100,000, decrease assigned fund balance, $100,000, increased expenditures for consultants by $200,000. Resolved this 15th day of March, 2018. Mr. Chairman, I move for approval.
Second, Commissioner Kush.
Mr. Chairman.
Schaefer.
I just got to ask a follow-up in the past week from our cities of Smyrna and Laverne that's agreed that they wanted to become part of the solution to this, but there's been no change in the monetary funding from those two entities.
We have invited them to participate with us, and if they so wish, we will modify this amendment here and accept their dollars. The first $250,000 is still on the table for them to participate in if they choose to.
Chairman?
Mr. Gurley.
Could we defer action on this until after our public hearings?
We can. I mean, we're a couple of minutes, 1 to 2 minutes
Into
past
it already,
5:30.
right.
So you think we need, it's going to take a lot more discussion?
I think there may be some discussion, yes.
Without objection, we will hold on the balance of this discussion until after the public hearings. Okay, we have the first public hearing is rezoning request 18-A001. Mr. John Elliott, 4, the Front Street property is located along Elam Road. The existing zoning is residential medium density. Proposed zoning is commercial services on a site of approximately 3.5 acres. Mr. DeMosi, you may tell us more about that request.
Yes, Mayor Burgess, thank you, and good evening, Mayor, members of the Commission. The applicant's proposing to rezone the subject property in order to locate their headquarters for their construction company, Southern Building Group. The applicant has submitted a concept plan and proposed interior drawings, which are included with your agenda packets. You can find those on your iPads. Additional information provided from the applicant indicates there may be some limited outdoor storage for construction equipment, but not immediately. During the Planning Commission's public hearing, there was some discussion about that. In the future, they anticipate building another structure to house most of the material that would have been stored outside. So as far as any outdoor storage, that should be fairly minimal at all. If there were to be any outdoor storage, it would have to be appropriately screened. Access to the property is and will continue to be from Elam Road. Any new access ways, parking areas, et cetera, would have to be constructed to current county standards. In addition, commercially zoned property has to install a Type 2 buffer adjacent to residentially zoned properties, and any outdoor storage, again, as I discussed earlier, would have to be appropriately screened, and this would also be subject to the county's performance standards located in the zoning ordinance. During the Planning Commission's public hearing, there were several speakers who did relay concerns regarding the intersection of Elam Road and Joby Jackson Parkway with a lot of the growth that's been going on in that area. The Planning Commission did ask staff to meet with city officials about the possibility of making some improvements to that intersection. Staff has met with city officials a few weeks ago. Stuff like this, these kind of meetings and these kind of processes do take time. So I just wanted to alert the public and also the commission that those talks are ongoing. There was also concern about the type of traffic in and out of the proposed facility. The applicant's representative stated that it would be primarily an office building with little construction traffic coming in and out. After discussion, the Planning Commission did recommend approval by by a unanimous vote. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Are there any questions for Mr. DeMosi before we have the public hearing? All right, so stand aside for a moment, please, sir. Now we will declare the public hearing open for those that wish to speak for or against this request. You may come forward and give us your name and address and make your comments. Is there anyone that wishes to speak for or against this request, 18-A001? No one is coming forward, therefore we will close the public hearing. And do we have a motion? Commissioner McAdoo.
This is probably the first time I've been involved in a zoning change since I've been here, so that shows you how much growth we got in this county now. But with no objections, like he stated, we are in negotiation with Murfreesboro on the traffic, and I think that was the only thing that they were concerned about was the traffic in that area. As you know, in that area, it's all commercial around that area, so I have no objection to making the motion to be approved.
You're making a motion there. Do we have a second to that? Commissioner Cush? Any other discussion regarding this request? Then all of you in favor of that, please say aye. Are there any opposed? All right, thank you. Next is some amendments to the zoning ordinance, 18-5001, section 1101M, concerning temporary uses, and this is a request by our planning staff. So, Mr. Demosi, you may make your request.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Burgess. At some point in the last year, staff discussed the possibility with both the Planning Commission and the Board of Zoning Appeals to allow administrative renewals for seasonal firework tents, temporary sales of food and merchandise, seasonal attractions, and those kind of things. Right now, the process is those particular uses are required to go through the special exception process to the Board of Zoning Appeals each year, have a public hearing each year. The same process is gone through. Many of these sites, especially the ones where we look at for firework tents, they're the same applicants, they're the same owner of the property. Nothing about these applications has changed, and some of them for quite a number of years. When I was at a conference and I was speaking with some of my counterparts with the City of Murfreesboro, they recently enacted some of these similar amendments. And after speaking with them about that and bringing it to both the Board of Zoning Appeals and Planning Commission's attention, both of them thought that these would be appropriate to bring forward for consideration. Without going into a whole lot of detail, you have the proposed changes in your agenda packets. Essentially what it'll do is if a special exception to the Board of Zoning Appeals has been approved within the previous 12-month period, and if you look at the paper that goes along with that, there's a number of things that they do have to comply with. The application would have to have the same applicant. The application would have to be for the same property, tax map, group, and parcel as a previously granted special exception. The tent, sales yard, anything on the property would have to be the same, nothing be changing in that. Zoning district, bulk regulations, again, will have to be the same, and all specifications as far as the operation of the site, again, those would all have to be identical as well. If all those are met and there have been no complaints or anything like that, then we would allow them to make an administrative renewal for those particular uses. If there was any concern in the planning director's mind or any of our staff, we have the ability to make them go through the special exception process. If there were any complaints or any violations that we noted on that, they would also have to go back through the special exception process, and this would only be for existing tents. Anybody that comes in with a new site would have to go through the special exception process at least the first time, and then be able to prove an adequate track record before being able to take advantage of this administrative renewal. So with that, we did have a public hearing regarding this, at the Planning Commission level. There were really very few comments on this, and it did pass unanimously with a recommendation for approval. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have. That was kind of the quick and dirty overview of that, but if you have specific questions, I'll be more than happy to discuss those with you.
Any questions for Mr. Demosi? All right, Mr. Demosi, stand aside till we have the public hearing. So now's an opportunity for those that wish to speak for or against this amendment to the zoning ordinance. You may come forward and give us your name and address and make your comments. The public hearing is open. I do not see anyone wishing to speak, so therefore the public hearing is closed. Do we have a motion? Commissioner Phillips.
Chairman, I move to approve, subject to all staff comments.
and Commissioner Dodd and others. Second, any more discussion or questions? All of you in favor of that, then please say aye. Are there any opposed? Thank you very much. All right, Mr. Baum, we may now reconvene your reports by the Budget, Finance, and Investment Committee. Excuse me. Oh, you want to say something about? Oh, okay, this is, hold on just one moment then so we can have. Sorry. That's all right, I didn't.
Thanks for the introduction, Doug. This is a continuation of the planning report. In planning at our last morning meeting, we discussed the need for alteration, updating our zoning ordinance in regard to the noise ordinance. It's been 10 years, believe it or not, since we updated the current noise ordinance that we have in planning. The reason that needs updating, as you can imagine, is in the 10 years since then, we have seen in planning a change in style of how planning does business. We have seen subdivisions that are much more dense. We have seen planned unit developments where the lots have gotten much smaller, where now you can almost reach out and touch the house next to you. So a lot more density we're seeing, which means a lot more close quarters for our citizens and our constituents. As a commissioner in District 7, one of the major complaints that I get is noise pollution. And one of the things that is a concern, because District 7 is kind of one of those tweeners. I'm mostly in the city, but I also border the county. And a lot of you out there in the county may have the same complaint that I do, is the fireworks usage. Believe it or not, in the county, we can use fireworks every day, all day, 12 months out of the year, 7 days a week. There are no restrictions on fireworks blasting. What the Planning Commission has explored, and Chairman Phillips of the Planning Commission has asked me to bring this to you before we spend a lot of time in going forward with the change in the noise ordinance, particularly as it relates to fireworks discharge, is what we're thinking about doing is mirroring the city's current code, which they follow a seasonal discharge, which means around 4th of July, a couple days prior, a couple days after, and around New Year's is the allowable slots for discharging firearms in the city. Not firearms, fireworks in the city. That's a whole different issue. The goal would be to try and gravitate towards that city's code. Now, I'm not talking about countywide. We're talking about in county subdivisions, townhomes, major subdivisions, and that's as far as we've gotten at that point. We're not talking about anything beyond that. So we kind of want to see a show of hands or nods if that would be acceptable to the full commission before we spend a lot of time on redoing the ordinance for fireworks. So basically what I'm asking is, our hope is to kind of limit it so your neighbor next door is not blasting 7 days a week, ordering cannons from Amazon, have them delivered to his house, so we can all have a little peace and quiet, and that's the goal. So our hope is to try and mirror the city's current codes and focus that on, like I said, county subdivisions, major subdivisions, townhomes, where you have a denser population. So I just need to kind of, you think you would follow us or let us go on that? And we also have Chief Farley's support on that. He's a big proponent to that. So all I need is kind of one of these or one of these. Would you support that? Okay, thank you. Jeff, did you get that? Majority says, Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Now, Commissioner Baum, we will allow the resumption of this amendment to the solid waste feasibility study and related budget amendment. That is, we do have a motion and a second. We're having discussion now. Mr. Gurley, you may address the body.
Yes, I had a question. It appears that part of this study, or this is to advance the development of county authority to develop the future system of a county authority. So I guess I'm wondering about where this is going, because I'm really not fond of authorities. Authorities are appointed bodies. They don't answer to anybody. You and I, my fellow commissioners, have to answer to the electorate. If they don't like what we're doing, then we can be voted out. But an authority, they're appointed people. They don't have to worry about getting reelected or anything like that. So I just wonder exactly where we're going with this, and if maybe we're stepping back and not taking the total active role that we ought to be doing in this.
Who wants to answer that? Mr. Nipper?
Well, in our committee, I think it came to us that the authority, the commissioners would have 3 seats, Murfreesboro 3 seats, all Smyrna 3, Eagleville 3, and Laverne would have 3 seats at the table. That means that the county commission could be overridden at any time there. I think that was called, the authority was like Middle Point 2.0, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And then there's another part that where we're talking about Task 5 here, where Republic or BFI, whatever it's called today, they can come on the county landfill and drill down through there to see if they would want to buy the county landfill so that they could extend or try to extend Middle Point for another 25 or 30 years. Now, if I'm mistaken, I'd like to have somebody correct me on that.
Let me follow up just a little bit. The definition of how the Solid Waste Authority would be structured has not been determined. It would be a board, that is correct. But that's what this additional amendment would allow. It would allow a thorough, complete discussion by all of the jurisdictions in this whole county before it would, and the framework and the foundation would be laid through that development process. Nothing would ever happen unless all the jurisdictions that choose to participate, their council or their commission agreed to it.
Okay.
So it would never be put in place.
So if I understand you correctly, then it would come back before the county commission to be voted on whether we would want to go ahead with an authority.
That is correct. This does nothing except allow the discussion between all of the entities to continue to see if a process could be defined that everybody thinks is correct and is appropriate for their particular jurisdiction. So this has nothing to do with approving it. It's just allowing the discussion to continue.
Okay, thank you.
And Mr. Cush wants to say a moment, and then we'll come back to Mr. Gurley.
I'm going to give you what I sit on the Solid Waste Advisory Committee with Mayor Burgess and several other appointed representatives from the different communities. I'll give you what I know, which is about this much. What we're voting on, this extension of money, is basically for this group, this consultant, to help us get to that next step of where we want to be, which we don't know yet where we want to be, because they have laid out some really good options for us. Is it a regional landfill with a multi-county participation? Perhaps. Is it waste to energy? Perhaps. Is it an extension of the current landfill where we sell the property, our current landfill, and they mine it, take the liability, and go on, which we'll talk about in a little bit? Perhaps. Is it that we build transfer stations and take our trash and recycles to transfer stations and then send those to other landfills in other states? Maybe. We don't know. We haven't been able to make that decision yet. But this consulting group, which is filled with experts who do this for a living, is plotting that course and giving us those options and explaining these scenarios for us. Waste is an emotional topic, period. Nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to pay for it. Nobody wants it in their backyard. I get it that Walter Hill's tired of it. I would be too. But the solution is not simple. Recycling is just a small part of it. It has to be done. I voted for it. I want it. But it's just a small part. There's many pieces to this. It's a complicated issue. The vote for the money is to continue to have these people guide us into an answer. Now, you have to Mr. Gurley's point, we're not experts in waste, and our days are numbered as elected officials. And again, we have an emotional stake in this, right? We're elected, and we have constituents that we have to answer to. So our decisions sometimes may be a little skewed as not necessarily what's good for the county or good for regional waste. A solid waste committee takes the emotion out of it. These people are 5 days a week, do this for a living, make decisions based on business decision and what's good for the county as a whole, right? Not for spots, and they got no favors to no people. That's their job. It's like a utility board, basically, right? So they're making business decisions. They're paid, and this is where I'm pontificating here. I'm shooting from the hip. They're paid through fees that they earn from the waste division. So they're paid from the fees that we would gather, they gather from the solid waste. They would run the solid waste operations, whatever those may be. So, and Mayor, please, if I'm off the weeds here, and this, if I'm not explaining what I thought we talked about over this last 12 months, please correct me or jump in. But that's what the Solid Waste Committee would be. Who ultimately appoints these people? Don't really know. How many would be on the board? Don't really know. 9, 11, 7, don't know. But this is going to be a job for somebody that would not be an elected official, in my opinion. I don't think you should have elected officials on the committee. They can be a friend of the committee and speak their mind, but I don't know that they need to have a voting interest in it, because again, it could skew the outcome. So I don't think we're there. This group is there and can make those kind of decisions yet. But I think these experts can help us get to where we're going to go and help us make the decisions we need to make. Because it could be a regional, it could be, we don't have the manpower to sit down with 6 or 7 other counties and negotiate a regional landfill. Let's be honest, we don't. But if we elect or appoint a regional or a solid waste council, those people, that's their job. That's what they would do. They would sit down with all these stakeholders and they would hammer these things out. And what was mentioned by this consultant, Commissioner Schaefer, said, you know, what about Smyrna and Laverne and some of those people that aren't financially participating? Well, the consultant told us that those who don't want to pay, they don't get their trash picked up. I mean, that's what this council has the ability to do. So if you're not going to play, you got to find your own way to get trash taken care of. So I hope I cleared some things up. Maybe I made it more confusing, but I would support, I hope you support the approval and go on.
All right. I was supposed to let everybody speak once before we go back around the second time as a matter of sort of courtesy, so sometimes I don't do that just exactly right. Mr. Piercy?
I sat on the Public Works Committee also with Mr. Cush. At the meeting, there was no numbers named of how many people would sit on this advisory board. I think it's a full-on mistake to not let the majority be commissioners of this county. If you take emotion out of the decision-making in this county, boys, we're just supposed to all go home. The people put us up here to represent them, not to pass it off to somebody that has no emotion, no feeling, or whatsoever about the county. And that's all I've got to say about that part.
But let's still stay focused here. Nothing would be determined until every jurisdiction approves of the process. This is simply something to allow this discussion to continue, period. Mr. Gurley.
Yes. Well, apparently we're voting on funding tonight to continue consultant funding. But I still am concerned about part of what we're telling the consultant to do is to, it says here, advance the development of a county authority. There's no one who's going to be doing, I beg to differ with Commissioner Cush, there's no one going to be doing this full time. They're going to be, all boards are people who are appointed. Citizen appointment, commissioner appointments. If you take the commissioners out of it, then you have really no link back to the electorate at all. And I think that's a mistake. The request the county enter into an agreement, you know, we can enter into an agreement with Republic with a simple ingress. I mean, all we got to do is give them the right of ingress to go and drill on the property. I mean, that's pretty straightforward. I mean, you know, if the school board buys property and they want a core drill, they get a letter of, give them 30 days to go core drill, and that doesn't require a consultant, doesn't require, you know, I just think we're putting things in here in this implementation that we should be deciding on as a governing body before we tell some consultant to go tell us how to do it. Thank you.
Well, the consultant is just facilitating the recommendation of the Solid Waste Advisory Committee that spent about 12 months on this already. That's all he's doing. No decisions have been made. Only decisions that can be made are by the respective jurisdictions. Mr. P.
Some of these folks that have been studying this, whether it's Commissioner Cush or, you know, whoever, you need to convince me I need to spend another $200,000 for somebody to look at something. You know, they've already got $200,000 or $100,000 of our dollars right now. You know, you said you got some good ideas out there. Ought to be darn good ones for $200,000, and I'll be darned if till I see some results from this if I want to give them any more money. So y'all need to do some convincing if you want my vote on this.
Okay, any other discussion? We do have a motion and a second. Is that correct? Yes.
Just a point of clarity. I believe Mayor Byrd just explained to the Public Works Committee that we're not writing a check for $200,000. We're allowing for a maximum not to exceed, and it may only reach a portion of that 200. Is that correct?
The agreement would, every task, every subtask within this agreement would be reviewed, and budget numbers would be given before they would be authorized to move any further, period. Yes, sir, Mr. Jordan.
Just for clarity, there's been talk about the drilling and core drilling at the old landfill site. That's later on in our conversation. That's not part of this conversation, because we got a fight coming, but it's about 5 minutes down the road as far as I'm concerned. You know, it's not part of this right here.
Not part of this. All right, any other discussion? If not, then you apparently are ready to vote. Please cast your votes. Motion is to extend the agreement with the consultant. A yes is to extend.
Anyone that did not vote and wishes to vote, or anyone who would like to change your vote, you may do so now.
Please record the votes.
13 yes, 7 no. Motion passes.
All right, thank you.
Item J1E, funding request for Rocky Fork Elementary and Rock Springs Elementary. This is to provide funding to build a new elementary school. It would be Rocky Fork Elementary School, and to provide design money for an addition. The addition would be at Rock Springs Elementary. Whereas there is a need to plan, design, construct, and renovate schools due to growth in the area, and whereas the Rutherford County Board of Education has anticipated the future needs of the school system, and whereas the Rutherford County Board of Education desires to proceed with the funding of the construction, equipping, architect fees, and other costs of the following projects at the estimated cost as approved by the various county committees: Rocky Fork Elementary, $32,700,000, Rock Springs Elementary Design, $350,000, for a total of $33,050,000. Therefore, be it resolved by the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners that the funding for the above-named projects in an estimated amount of $33,050,000 be authorized from a future bond issue for the constructing, equipping, architect fees, and other costs for the projects. Resolved this 15th day of March 2018. Mr. Chairman, I move for approval.
Commissioner Allen, second. Discussion. Okay, no discussion. We're ready to vote. Please cast your votes.
Anyone that did not vote and wishes to vote, or anyone who would like to change your vote, you may do so now.
Record the votes, please.
20 yes, motion passes.
Item J1F, presentation of State Form CT 0253 for the Board of Education EESI loan. This is a state program where we have borrowed money from the state at an interest rate of 1% to buy electronic components to turn on and off things like heating and air conditioning units, the lighting system, all designed to increase efficiency. This form is on your iPads. It's for presentation purposes only, and no action is required on this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Baum.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir, Mr.
Could I ask a question about what we just approved before this? And that's, this elementary is going to cost $32 million. I was trying to remember, and Brown's Chapel, I think was the last elementary maybe that we had, and I think it was around 18 million. Can we ask the school system if they remember what it cost?
I think that it was more than 18 million, but Mr. Odom and Mr. Sandberg are here, but it's probably in the low 20s, wasn't it? Probably in total. They're not sure and don't remember. Okay. Okay, we're ready to move on. There's not a report from the Health and Education Committee, the Property Management Committee, or the Public Safety Committee. And now we're ready to start this one resolution from the Public Works and Planning Committee, and without objection, Mr. Piercy has asked for permission and privilege to speak before we have this resolution put on the floor. Mr. Yes, sir.
First of all, I'd like to apologize for my last comment by leaving the ladies of this commission out. I should have said boys and gals. You know, I've got something in my district nobody else has. I've got 2 landfills. I've got something in my district nobody else wants, 2 landfills. I've got a district full of passionate people that are dead tired of trash. Now, I know it's going to sound like I'm going to get off the subject, but I'm coming around to my point. People are tired of the dirt on the streets. They're tired of the trash in their yards, out in their fields. They're tired of the smell. I hear it every day. I thank Mr. Whaley for coming and speaking his part. He may have already left the building, but that's just one of hundreds that has his ideas and thoughts toward the landfill. At today's standings, a lot of you may not understand this, and I feel like it's coming from we have not had the opportunity to view the findings of the committee Mr. Cush sits on, which I think would be very important for every commissioner to be able to read the findings and make a decision within ourselves of what we thought would be best and then bring that idea to the commission. I feel like the commission is being left out. Personally, I have been left out, and I know why. I could not make the decision for my district that's most likely going to be made, and Mr. Jordan couldn't either. We are the 2 closest districts to this landfill. It's in mine. It's next to his. Charlie's got a little piece close to it. Mr. P's probably the next. None of us have been included in any of this. We've been left out. Well, I know why, and that's because they probably thought we could not make the hardcore cut decision. Well, I'm here to tell you different. I could not make it, and I will not make it. I'm totally against any expansion of the landfill in the 2nd district. It affects all of my district. It affects all of your districts. Today, it's small. We can see what 30 years of trash has put in the Walter Hill community. You can't fathom what it will be in the future. And most important, we have no control over the Middle Point BFI landfill whatsoever. No control. That's one of the most frustrating things of being the commissioner of the 2nd district is somebody to ask you, well, why do y'all do this? Well, why do you do that? They have no idea. We can't do nothing because our power was dealt away when it was started in the early 90s. It was giveaway. It probably looked good at the time, you know, offered the county free dumping, a little tipping fee money. At that time, I'm sure the commission thought they had the dog by the tail. The boys, this is the way to go. Well, you can go out there today and see what the dog turned into. It's a mountain of trash. The people down there refer to it as Mount Trashmore. That's kind of pitiful. To allow what is coming up to be voted on to core drill, to allow BFI to core drill that property is a step toward a mega site landfill. You may not understand that now, but in days to come you will. At the Public Works meeting the other night, it was brought up maybe we could negotiate with them and maybe get something different than what we have now. A $9 billion corporation negotiates with nobody because they don't have to. That's how they got that big. They've stepped over steps a lot bigger than Rutherford County and are still in business. Now, what you might not understand, I've lived out there 50 years. Mr. Jordan's lived out there 50 years. It's 2 miles from my house. What I'm telling you is not hearsay. I can smell it at my house. You can smell it in a 5-mile radius. You give it another 30 years, which is approximately what the county landfill would allow them to do, you'll smell it way past your district, Mr. Cush. You may not now, you may not can see it, but you will then. At this point, the county landfill has got Republic
bounded against the river. They can go higher, and they may not, but they cannot make their footprint larger because we have them hemmed against the river. If we sell or give the county landfill to them, that will open it up to ever how many acres is in the county landfill and multiple farms that have been excavated away for the soil to cover their landfill. There will be no stopping it. It will never go away. That's the reason I'm against the core drilling, allowing them to test core drill. It's just that simple. If there was going to be core drilling done, I would be all about the county doing its own core drilling so you would know what was there. All you will know if someone else core drills it, what they tell you. I can't say Republic is not doing the best job they can possibly do with the landfill, or they're not. All I can do is hope they are, and that's all any of us can do. But we have the opportunity right now to look at other ideas other than giving or selling the county landfill to the Republic landfill and take control back over our county's trash. It's our opportunity we've had since in the early 90s. If we let this pass through our fingers, we'll never have that opportunity again. They will get it. It will turn to a mega landfill site, and it'll be here for hundreds of years. I would like to make, well, first of all, I'd like to let Mr. Jordan wanted to speak also.
Let's get a motion on the floor. We're really just having a discussion here about what are the pros and cons. So we don't have a motion yet, so let's get a motion, then whoever wants to speak can speak, and we'll start with Mr. Jordan if he so chooses. No, Mr. Jernigan has to put the motion on the floor. He's the chairman of the Public Works and Planning Committee. So Mr. Jernigan, come forward and make your resolution.
Whereas the attached exhibit agreement between Rutherford County, Tennessee and BFI Waste System of Tennessee, LLC, for accessing the Rutherford County Class 1 and Class 3 landfill located at 600 Landfill Road, a copy of said access agreement being attached hereto as exhibit and incorporated, and herein as set forth verbatim is the best interest of the citizens of Rutherford County. Now therefore be it resolved by the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners that the appropriate officials for and on behalf of the Rutherford County be and hereby are authorized to enter into and execute for and on behalf of the Rutherford County said assess agreement for BFI System of Tennessee, LLC. Resolved this 15th day of May 2018.
And you make that motion, Mr. Jernigan?
Yes, sir, I make that motion.
Now, is there a second? Commissioner Serino? Now discussion. Commissioner Jordan.
I don't hardly know where to begin. I spoke at Public Works the other night, and I can tell you right now, the business decision is to do this. The business decision is to merge the landfills, the business decision. But you're dealing with a community out there that's been putting up with this landfill for 30 plus years. I grew up out there. I remember driving down Memorial Boulevard, Lebanon Highway, and you could look over there at Mr. Morgan Green's farm, and there was a valley. He had polled Hereford cows. He was out every day riding around as an international scout, checking his cows. That is Middle Point Landfill. It's unbelievable, the elevation change between that beautiful valley, like a Norman Rockwell painting over there. It did. It was beautiful. And for that to be from that depression, that valley, to that mountain in the last 31 years, it's absolutely unbelievable. Now, if we proceed with this and this works out, and this might not even work if we do this, but if this does work out, They've got a mountain here, we've got a mountain here, they excavate our mountain, and the two mountains become one. We're not even denting the surface about how far that mountain goes in the sky now compared to what will be when it's all merged together. We've got hundreds and hundreds of trucks every day going out there. We've got the smell, we've got the stink, we've got everything else. I mean, what is the business value of sacrificing a community? This community has been sacrificed for 30 years, and Commissioner Piercy's told the truth on everything he just said. They own the land on the other side of the county landfill. There's enough political pressure from all the surrounding counties that want to bring their garbage here. They won't only get our landfill and run for 25 more years. They'll blow right on past that across the Matthews property they bought that looks like a lunar landscape over there now. And there'll be a landfill there for 100 years. All the other counties around us, I've been told there's 16 or 17 municipalities or counties that haul garbage there. They're paying to haul their garbage here. They pay for transfer stations and tipping fees and all. They don't want a landfill in their community. And we're all addicted to free dumping and a little bit of money. It's like for a drug addict. We're getting this for nothing. Our solid waste budget is a penance of what it should be if it wasn't for having the landfill. So if we want to keep on going down that path and sacrifice North Murfreesboro and sacrifice Lascassas, Walter Hill, I live in Leanna, I smell it in my house. When I lived on Leanna Road, I smelled it every day. I moved 3 miles. I smell it every now and then now, but it'll get to be a whole lot worse. But this is the point right now where we either draw the line in the sand and say we're not going to do this, or we don't. And we say Walter Hill's for sale. North Murfreesboro's for sale. And that's the line. You know, but I know it's going to cost some money. We've got a $600 million budget we're going to work on the next few weeks. And it'll probably cost us $15 million a year to have a solid waste department, and more than we're spending now. I hate it. It's a fact of life. We need a recycling department and budget and system and whatever you call it, program. We don't have it because we're so addicted to free dumping. We just haul everything out there and bury it in the ground. I mean, this is the 21st century, and we're still digging a hole and putting our garbage in it. Aren't we better than that? They were doing that 1,000 years ago. You know, I told somebody several weeks ago what was going to happen, and it was going to pass about 17-4 because I'll vote no. Commissioner Piercy will vote no. In my opinion, Charlie Baum's district will vote no, and Commissioner P will vote no, and the rest of y'all look at the business side of it and say this is what makes sense for the county. And if you want to just throw away a community, and that's exactly what you need to do. But thank you a lot.
Mr. P.
Well, he was right on the vote, at least for mine. But I've got a couple of questions. The first one is several years ago, John Rogers was commissioner here. And during that time, there was a resolution passed that changes how we interact with any new landfill. And it gave the county more control over the landfill. Now, if a landfill is passed, the state has control, as Mr. Piercy's found out. We, as commission, have no say in it, same as with a rock crusher. So I, for one, would like to know the answer on if we proceed down this road, whether we'd actually have more say over any future landfills and exactly what that resolution did for us. But that's some research that needs to be done before this vote's taken, in my opinion. Now, the other thing I want to say is, no, you guys probably don't smell the landfill. I've got family that owns property directly across the river from them. I cut hay over there, and I'll tell you, sometimes it'll bring tears to your eyes while you're trying to work in that area. But it affects everybody in this room and everybody in this county. If you recall, a few years ago, this is the business that was hauling nuclear waste into our landfill right next to our water supply. Now, a lot of people don't, oh man, I wish he hadn't have said that. But these are the people you're dealing with. They did this without our knowledge, without our consent, and it was actually blamed back on this commission that we allowed that, which was a blatant lie. Now, if you want to trust these guys, you go right ahead, but by George, I'm not one of them. Now, having said all that, I want to make a motion that we put this vote off at least until we get an answer on this resolution that was passed by former Commissioner John Rogers about what control we would have over a landfill. I'll make that motion.
Need a little bit more confirmation. You're saying
there was a resolution.
What does the control mean? Does that mean you can decide whether there is going to be a landfill located? You do have that authority right now. You did pass
No, I'm
that.
talking about after a landfill is established. My understanding, and that's why I want more information on it, because it's been several years ago that this was brought up. Commissioner Jordan did remember it, and neither one of us can recall the specifics of it. But my understanding at that time was it gave us control over the landfill more than what we have now.
That may be true. The only thing I know you passed is what's called the Jackson Law, which gives the county commission the authority to trump and stop any new landfill from being put in place. It has to have commission approval, period, before you can build a landfill.
And that may be all that there is, but I would like that researched and brought back to us before we do this vote, and that's what my motion is.
And so you're saying, and you had a second, Mr. Piercy. What discussion on this? Is it a motion or an amendment? There's a motion on the floor, so this can't be a motion, so you got to make an amendment to defer. I understand. So it is a motion to defer. Now, we can discuss that if anyone chooses to discuss that. Do you have any comments or whatever?
If you'll allow it. Again, I still think we're very uneducated on the decisions we're fixing to make. We need more information before any step forward is made. They're looking at, it depends on what paper you look at, whether it's 3 to 5, 5 to 8, 8 to 10, it even got up to 12 years of life left in the middle point. There's going to be some life left in the county landfill when they can get it surveyed out and maybe let them start putting some more construction waste back in there. I think we're fast-tracking this way too fast without the information we need to have to make these very important decisions. I asked you to help me help my district too.
Let me just make one comment here. This is not giving any authority for us to even negotiate an agreement with them. We don't know if the results of this study that they propose to make would even make them want to do this. We will never know if there's any opportunity for consolidation unless these steps are taken to test and investigate what's down there and their determination if they think it can move. Everything they find, we will have access to, everything. There is no motion on the table here to go into any agreement with them even yet. It's just a discovery process that if you want the citizens of Rutherford County to know if so-called Middle Point 2.0 is reasonable and acceptable and wanting to be pursued by them, that's all you're going to find out, nothing else. Now, let's see, is anybody else? Mr. McAdoo hadn't spoken, then we'll come back, Mr. Gurley.
In his discussion, he brought up why can't the county do our own drilling? Why can't we do our own study of our own landfill and have the facts? Is that what you brought up? Is that what you want to defer this for, to see if it's feasible for us to do our own study?
As a governing body, we have very little information. I attended the last of 3 meetings when the advisory board presented their findings to the committee. There was very low turnout of commissioners. Of course, I know everybody's busy, everybody's got other plans, but it would have really been good if everyone could have listened to their findings and noticed how soon a decision was made to bring to Public Works. I think all the decisions should have been brought to Public Works and discussed, or even to the full commission. I still think it's just on a fast track. We can core drill that ground, we can tell what's in it, and we'll know. You let someone else core drill it for another company, you will know what they tell you. It's just that simple. I'm not calling them out as being dishonest, but a good business decision is made by yourself on what facts you find, not what somebody told you. Now, that's just good business. Of course, they told me when I was first elected to this commission, you won't like it at the commission because you can't run it like a business. Well, you can if you choose to and make wise decisions on facts you have in hand and not on something you've heard. Thank you.
Point of order, Mr.
Just
Chairman.
one more thing. Everything that they drill and everything they find, this agreement gives us complete and total access to it, and our engineers can review that and evaluate it with no decision being made, no commitment being made by this commission. Mr. Curley wanted to say something, Mr.
Point of order, which I think takes precedence, is that we're talking about a motion to defer, and the discussion should be germane to that motion.
Okay. Point of order is well taken. Now, so the motion on the floor is to defer action on this until Mr. P's question is answered as to what the commission approved in some previous years with respect to what authority the commission has in the operation or otherwise of whatever you might want to say with respect to the use or development or operation of a landfill.
Mr. Chairman, again, I think we have a time limit in our rules about how far out the deferral can be made, so I think it has to have a timeline.
Okay, do you want it brought back? And Mr. P, do you want it started with Public Works before it comes back to the commission, or? Okay, we won't, until we find that, or well, we can report we either found it or didn't find it, and that's about it. So Mr. McCrary will be looking for that information. We will assist.
Your commission rules, my microphone here is falling apart, say that no deferral would exceed 2 consecutive meetings. So we want to make sure that the motion to defer and the timeline for that is not longer than 2 meetings from now.
Is that okay with you, Mr. P. and Mr. Piercy? All right, so we ready to vote on this motion to defer? All right, then, if you're ready to vote, please cast your votes. Motion to defer, yes, sir. Mr. Jernigan is not here, so Madam Clerk, is he? Oh, there, he's standing up here. All right, but you haven't voted, Mr. Jernigan.
I didn't say I voted.
Have you voted?
Yes.
The system is not reflecting that.
I believe we're ready. Anyone that did not vote and wishes to vote, or anyone who would like to change your vote, you may do so now.
Record the votes.
Last on the draw there, 17 yes, 3 no. Motion passes.
Okay, so we don't need to follow up on the original motion. that's this trump that. Okay, thank you, Mr. Jernigan. Steering Legislative and Governmental Committee, we have one
Mayor
resolution
Burgess.
there.
Mayor Burgess.
Excuse me, Mr. Phillips.
I've heard Joyce, Allen, and I'm not sure who else goes back this far, but I got a resolution mixed up on solid waste and emissions control a minute ago, and I'll try not to get this mixed up. Years ago, Joyce and Allen, there was some attempt made by BFI or whoever that governing body or whoever that management firm was at that time, some attempt made to take over our landfill. And this is when we were being fined, it seems like several times a year for our landfill not meeting certain standards. At what I remember, and you guys help me, but what I remember, that management group, and I think it was BFI, but it might not have been, but that management group went over and evaluated the garbage that was in the landfill in anticipation of taking that over, taking that old garbage out, putting it in their landfill, then lining our old landfill and taking that over. That's what I remember. And after they did their testing, they said they wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. So that all fell through. That tells me what has to still be in that landfill that the county owns right now. So I think there's already been some of that testing done, but it was a long, long time ago. George, do you remember any of that? Alan, do you remember any of that? And I know I probably didn't dream that, but there had to be something there years and years ago where an evaluation was made by that same landfill. And they said, no, we're not interested in doing that because of that landfill, the county landfill, being unlined and all of the leakage that was going on. They just didn't want to take a part of that. So I think there's some information out there, but it is years and years and years old as to what they found.
And we do not have that information, and that was about 2 owners previous to the current owner that actually did it. I have heard that, yes. Mr. McAdoo and somebody else over here wanted to speak. Ms. Allen.
Well, he asked the question. True, that did happen, and I think what Commissioner P is asking for under Commissioner Rogers, if we just go ahead and do the complete research during that period, you probably will find some of that, Commissioner P, when he was brought all that up. We did have that, and there was a discussion on it. BFI looked at it and said, no, we won't do it. But also, during that period of time, the Guy James property was put in that calculation. And that was used as like a balance by the county that if BFI did this, that we got on, we can go here and we can do this. And then it came up that the Guy James property had the dirt that they could sell to BFI, so on and so forth. But if you look up that information that you're talking about from Commissioner Rogers, you probably will find all this.
Let's see, Mrs. Allen.
I was just going to say, Commissioner Piercy brought up a great point. I don't have any information about the Solid Waste Advisory Committee and the report that they generated. I believe that meeting was conducted at the same time we had Health and Education that same night. So there were several of us who didn't have the opportunity to hear that conversation. So if there is a formal written report, I would like to request that it be distributed to the Commission.
Okay, it is a formal report, the last report, and we'll make it available somehow. It's a few hundred pages. I do want to make, okay, Mr. Schaefer.
Just something quick. I know that there's been people from the county and Murfreesboro, including the deputy mayor, that have traveled around looking at what other areas in eastern part of the country and northern part of the country at least, what they have done to combat the solid waste when it comes. And I would like, and I know the deputy mayor has been involved with it ever since we started in here, and I'd like when this comes up again, to have the deputy mayor who would ever be the spokesperson for those people that went around, be it somebody from Murfreesboro or not, to give us the briefing on the alternatives and the time frame that it would take to do an alternative.
Much of that information is included in this report already. And
I could use a more concise, I'm not a speed reader.
you're going to have to read it all to get the full understanding of it. And I do want to tell you this. We have a liability out there. Every one of you know this. Around $500,000 a year just to maintain that landfill. It's not going to go away. It's perpetual. That's a fact of life. Let's see. So we really have stopped it after we got through with that. But does anybody else want to get anything else said before we move on to the last report? Okay, Steering Legislative and Governmental Committee, Commissioner Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did want to say one thing really quickly, that's a good example why I appreciate serving with everyone up here, because civility is sorely lacking in politics right now. But I think we did a pretty good job there of everyone being able to provide a motion when necessary and remove it when necessary and share logic too. So thank you for the representation that you've provided for your constituents tonight from everyone, because I know they appreciate it, and I certainly do as well. I've got a resolution for you from Steering. Commissioner Gooch, as you can see, is not here tonight with some work responsibilities, so the much younger and equally bald commissioner on Steering is going to try to do my best to replace him. Be it resolved, the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners respectfully requests, and by this resolution hereby does request, that the Tennessee Legislature abolish emissions testing requirements for motor vehicles in Rutherford County, Tennessee. Be it further resolved, the clerk of this commission is hereby directed to forward a copy of this resolution to the legislative delegation for Rutherford County, resolved this 15th day of March 2018. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion for its approval.
Second, Commissioner Stevens and Nipper and others. Any further discussion? Commissioner Schaefer.
Got it, too. Probably more than anybody here, I make trips from Bell Road in Nashville to Main Street in Murfreesboro, down Murfreesboro Road. And I agree that I'd love to get rid of the emissions, but with the way those 4 cities that are along the way have stoplights set up, when they've got left turn signals that go on no matter what, whether there's anybody there or not, so on the main road, one side sitting, et cetera, like this, the lights that aren't changed from rush hour in the morning, even on Sundays, and this type thing. And with more cars on the road, that's why I'm going to vote against this, for the simple reason I think the cities need to get with the state, TDOT, since it's a state road, whatever, and do something about the traffic lights that are on that road. And when you look at the TVs, and they usually give you 24, they don't give you Murfreesboro Road coming down here. But when you see in the morning, and some of us that are retired get to look at this news, but anyhow, it's nothing to see 75 to 100-minute drive from Murfreesboro to downtown Nashville. And that's telling me that we're putting awful lot of stuff, even with more fuel-efficient cars on the road now.
Any other discussion? All right then, all of you in favor of this motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Let the record reflect. Mr. Schaefer voted no. Other business. Mr. Gurley.
Yes, I would just like to take this opportunity to compliment the Rutherford County school system, the administration, the principals, and the teachers in all of our schools for the way the process was handled yesterday with the activities that took place in the various schools. I've seen some very positive comments on social media from several of our schools. I've heard no negative. That's the nice thing. So really and truly, I think the school system needs to be commended for the way they used yesterday as an opportunity to allow students to express themselves, at the same time maintain discipline, respect, and to educate the students about what protest and so on is all about. Thank you.
Mr. Reed.
Mr. Chairman, I do want to make a comment to the body here tonight. I don't know if you've noticed or not, but it seems like every time public comment comes up, my name ends up in there in some way or the other. And tonight it was mentioned the fact what I know about burn barrels. And in Rockville, we still have burn barrels. I guess it's due to the fact that now we're the smallest convenience center that's coming out in the county. But what I would like to say, when you're going to your ham breakfasts and your pancake breakfasts in the next few weeks, I want you to remember that March the 20th is National Agriculture Day. And when you're sitting down eating that bacon or eating that wheat from those pancakes or whatever, I want you to remember farmer, because one farmer feeds 165 people today in this country. And in this county right here, our farmers are decreasing because we're now raising only one crop on our property in a lot of places. And that one crop is houses in many situations, not necessarily the farms we've had in the past. But with March 20th, nationwide, it's called National Agriculture Day. So when you get up on that day, I think it's Tuesday, just remember a farmer. And when those eggs shine back at you and that milk you drink, just remember a farmer.
Mr. P.
Well, speaking of eating, this Saturday, the 17th, from 6 to 10, the Kittrell Volunteer Fire Department is having a ham breakfast. I don't think we're serving green eggs. Isn't that St. Patrick's Day? I may be off, but definitely not. But sure would like to invite everyone out. Thank you.
Mrs. Allen.
I wanted to take an opportunity to say a word of appreciation to our schools and our school system as well. Many of the Title I schools have had their spring planning session, and it's about a 2-hour meeting, and they go through and they tell you how the different ways that they've spent the money that's been given to them for our low-income children. And it's a really humbling experience, and it's a really enlightening one as well. These folks do a terrific job with these kids, and they're changing lives every day. And I know that's something that every teacher does, but these are the most disadvantaged children in our county. And so it's really a powerful thing. So if you have a Title I school in your area, if you ever get a chance to go, I would really encourage you to go. I've gone to as many of them as I can. There's one in the morning at Smyrna Primary. There's one next Tuesday morning at Smyrna Middle, and I believe those were maybe the last two. So if you get a chance to do that, please go and just see how those dollars are being used, because you hear so many negative things about, oh, this is going to be a Title I school. It's a mission field. I mean, these people are really called to do this work, and it's extremely impressive. So I just wanted to give them a shout out.
Mr. Kush.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to rewind the clock back about 5 minutes, if you would let me. Going back to Ms. Allen's request and Mr. Schaefer's request about a synopsis of the Solid Waste Committee's report. Sitting here tonight, 20 of these commissioners really did not get to see the full effect of 12 months worth of work that you and I set on. And that binder, all 200 pages, would be a daunting task to review. So, you know, although you have graciously made that available, I think it's really kind of unfair to just throw it out there for all of us to review. So I'm going to suggest that, back to Mr. Schaefer's request, that perhaps we invite, or maybe show of hands, if you all would like to have a 30-minute presentation or so for Deputy Mayor Davidson or Mac Nolan, his counterpart with the city, to come and give us a 30-minute briefing of what that final meeting was about and the approximate 4 scenarios that were brought up. So I'm going to throw that out there, maybe against the mayor's wishes, but would you all be interested? Maybe show of hands if you'd be interested in being a little more educated on what that committee did. I see a majority. Mayor, do you mind if I make a request to the
think we need to
Deputy Mayor
really,
or Mac Nolan?
Honestly, I don't think the Deputy Mayor is the person to make this presentation. I'm just being honest. I mean, I think we really need probably the consultant that we've engaged and spent all this money on to make the presentation as an independent third party.
Would you like to reach out to him, or do you?
I think I'll reach out to him.
Maybe if you can condense it to 30 minutes or so?
And of course, I just want everybody to go on record, we're going to be paying for this, but I think it'd be money well spent.
Money well spent. You all okay with that? Okay.
Mr. Gurley.
Yes, well, like Commissioner Allen said, we had this meeting, presentation was scheduled at the same time of another standing committee, Health and Ed. We met in the adjoining room next door. I caught about the first 5 minutes or 10 minutes of basically just introductions and so on, so didn't have the opportunity to sit in on that. But I'd like to see the report. If I'm going to vote on something that entails as much, has such a large impact on where this county is going to be and what we're going to be spending in the coming 20 or 30 years, I want to see the report. And I do speed read. It won't take me very long to read that. So I'd like to see it. I mean, the cost of producing that report is really minimal compared to the cost of what we're going to be spending. So, yeah, if we're going to vote on something, we ought to have the report in front of us. We ought to have the opportunity to at least try to read it before we take any vote. Thank you.
I will have these copies made. Do you want me to, you going to pick them up, or do you want me to send them to your home? Was that? It's so big, I don't know where we can put it, okay, as far as how much. Okay. Brian, you can manage 200 pages or whatever it is on SharePoint, and you can pick it up there. Is that okay? You don't want a hard copy? That's easy. Mr. Nipper.
Mr. Mayor, I was just going to suggest if we are going to have a meeting, let's see if we can avoid the week of spring break, because so many people will be gone at that time. Thank you.
Chairman, I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
We did tape that meeting. I believe we've got that on video. If people would like to review that.
That is tape. Brian, Mr. Davidson has said we taped that last meeting in its entirety. And how can they access that?
It is available on YouTube.
So that whole meeting is available on YouTube, and we can still have this other meeting, but there it is already if you want to sit and watch. How long did that meeting last? 2 hours or so. That is out there as another resource. And if you think that's acceptable, you can do that, or we can have a review session with our consultant at some point. Anyway, I guess we'll maybe email you and find out if you still want to have that meeting after you decide if you're going to review all this on SharePoint. We have a motion to adjourn. I'm sorry, Mr. Stevens, we should have acted upon that. But anyway, might as well get this out of our system, or at least set some direction. If there's no further business, we are adjourned. Thank you.